people, especially in Florida, out of work, sue to have the ships sail from Florida ports.
This will be something that we believe we have every legal right to insist upon. We don't believe the federal government has the right to mothball a major industry for over a year. Based on very little evidence and very little data.
DeSantis says nearby nations in the Caribbean are resuming cruising, and that if domestic ports don't open, Americans will fly there to cruise instead. In Broward County, Florida, Eben Brown, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumont. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Half a day, this is Honey. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Sunday brunch at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro is back. Come and enjoy Mezcla's true taste of Guam. Open for 2 seatings at 10:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. $28.95 for adults and $14.95 for kids 5 to 11 years old. Call 479-2652 or 2653 for reservations. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
This is being necessary to the security of the free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the way that Tall Tales begins every day, even today, which is the least favorite day in Tailgaters Week because there will be no Tall Tales for the next 2 days. 70 hours of no Tall Tales. It's tough, but Jose and I somehow struggle through it. So I'll begin today, as I usually do, with Zemi Ikotny. Zemi Ikotny being my backwards play on words, backwards bilingual play on words that means meet the press. And up until this week, we've been doing without editorials from our local newspaper, the Pacific Daily News. Given the quality of what they've been putting out lately, I think we may look at the pre-editorial days as the good old days because they haven't exactly set the world on fire. The Daily News has not exactly set the world on fire with its editorials. So here we go. Today's editorial is called Benefit to Community. Grants help with mentoring, training, and business startups. When the government gives tax breaks to businesses on Guam via qualifying certificates, it's important that the company benefits in ways beyond the new jobs and economic activity generated. Now, that's not correct, and I have pointed out why it's not correct on innumerable occasions. But I'll get a little farther down here, and I'll go back and tell you why it's not correct. Businesses issued tax break qualifying certificates through the Guam Economic Development Authority pay mandatory annual contributions And Gita used to keep most of this money for its own operations. But starting in 2019, the agency began funding availability and provided an opportunity for other agencies and nonprofit groups to apply for grants. On Monday, Gita announced 7 government nonprofits that were awarded a total of over $303,000 to fund projects related to economic development, job training, and developing small businesses. That was $48,000 for GCA Trades Academy and $49,000 for the Department of Corrections, $30,000 for the Micronesian Community Development Corporation, which helps provide affordable housing to train residents to learn electrical and HVAC skills. The Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association got $50,000. The Guam Unique Merchandise and Art Inc. received $49,911 to use as its matching requirement for an existing federal grant to develop at least 6 new home-based businesses in each village, and so on. The latest Gita grants highlight how the tax program can benefit the community in the best way. People will get mentoring and training to develop skills to find newer, better jobs or start their own companies. Businesses will get help so they can proceed. Nonprofit and government agencies can apply for these latest series of community contribution grants on Gita's website. This whole thing is a stupid boondoggle, folks. Here's what we're talking about. A business comes to Guam, or a business wants to come to Guam, and it gets in touch with the Guam Economic Development Authority and said, we want to start our business here in Guam. You don't have a business like ours, but in order to help us get through the startup phase and to make sure that we're going to be profitable, we want a tax incentive. The Gita Economic Development Authority can grant Gita certificates that forgive all of the income tax, all of the gross receipts tax, and all of the property tax for up to 20 years. Yeah. Now, this law was put on the books in 1965 to attract new business and industry to Guam. The primary beneficiaries of these Gita certificates have been the hotels. And I could understand it because, in 1965, this did not seem like a very likely place to start a hotel. And so the thinking was, well, we'll sweeten the pot a little bit. We'll give companies an incentive to come here by giving them a tax break. And since then, we've given out a lot of tax breaks to a lot of different companies, etc. But when these tax breaks are provided, it means the company pays less tax, or sometimes no tax. So then, when these certificates are granted, then Gita says, however, even though you don't have to pay tax, you have to pay us a certain amount for this, what's it called? Mandatory annual community contributions. So then the company has to pay $100,000, a couple $100,000, etc. What happens to the money? Well, Gita gets to decide what happens to the money. It makes no sense. If we're going to give tax incentives, just give tax incentives. What is the benefit in creating a slush fund for the board of directors at Gita to dole out to I don't know who? Friends of Gita, friends of the board members?
Sounds like it creates maximum havoc.
Exactly, yeah. That was one of the things that Gita invested in, the movie called Max Havoc. But if we're going to give tax incentives, why do we then say, we'll give you a tax incentive, but you got to contribute a couple $100,000 to this slush fund that we're going to create, and then we'll decide where that slush fund is going to be spent. If we're going to do it, give the tax incentive, or if we're going to collect some money, let it go into the general fund and let the legislature appropriate it. I just don't like the idea of GURA, I mean, Gita having this slush fund to hand out to, maybe these are good ideas, maybe they're not good ideas, but that's just not the job of an economic development authority. It's a dumb program. And of course, it's a dumb editorial. How many is that in a row now? Monday to 4?
Three.
Three in a row?
There was a guest editorial. So this is a third local one.
Yeah, 3 dumb editorials in a row. 3 strikes and you're out in most ballparks. Pacific Daily News. Come on, Kaleo, let's sharpen up the game over there at the Daily News. Okay, let's turn now to the Post, who oftentimes comes up with pretty good editorials. And here's the Post. Road safety is compromised. Pocketbooks take a hit when highway fund is diverted. Many Guamanians who can't afford to replace a family vehicle every few years know that the thud and creak of their ride hitting a pothole over and over can cause worry that these bad roads will hurt their pockets later on. I got to stop here and talk about something that probably nobody but I care about. And that's this. We don't have potholes on Guam. We don't have potholes. If we do, we don't have very many. Here is what a pothole is. Let's say that you're talking about US 12 in southern Wisconsin, right? Concrete road. Now, in the summertime, it rains a lot in Wisconsin. And because it rains, water gets underneath that pavement. Well, come November, December, January, guess what happens? Water freezes. And when the water freezes, it expands. And it causes that concrete to fracture. Now, you don't notice it one winter, 2, but pretty soon the concrete gives away and caves in, and this is what's called a pothole. It doesn't freeze very often on Guam. Now, you could have a situation where there's erosion under the highway, and you don't have very many potholes on blacktop roads because the blacktop is not as rigid as the concrete, but there could be situations where water erodes underneath the concrete and causes a pothole to form, but not usually. So most of the holes that we have here most of the rough spots on our highways are not potholes. Now, I thought for a long time that the Department, as you were Public Utility Agency, PWOG, which became the Waterworks Authority, had some kind of a device, kind of like a plow that would plow pavement, because it wouldn't be long after a road was repaved that PUAG would be in there tearing it up. And the patch that they put on what they tore up was worse than any pothole. So this is an awful lot of the rough spots on the road, just really poorly done repair jobs or no repair jobs at all. So, but for the purposes of this editorial, we'll just call all of these blemishes in the pavement potholes. Tires might need replacement sooner than the normal wear and tear. Wheels can get misaligned, and the steering and suspension could get the kind of damage that may cause a major financial setback to someone with meager means and possibly jeopardize a household's ability to keep a job or take the kids to school. What's more worrisome is that avoiding a pothole could also endanger the lives of motorists and pedestrians. There is a source of cash that is specifically identified by Guam law for road repairs, such as long-term fixes of potholes and road improvements, such as developing paved sidewalks, bike lanes, and crosswalks that will help keep motorists, pedestrians, and bikers safe. Cash that goes into the Highway Special Revenue Fund comes directly from motorists and businesses that pay liquid fuel tax for the gasoline or diesel they buy at the gas pumps, and for travelers whose cost of airfare includes jet fuel. Payments for the yearly vehicle registration and driver's license fees every 3 to 5 years also go into this highway fund. The government imposes an aviation fuel tax of 8 cents per gallon, a diesel fuel tax of 14 cents a gallon, and for gasoline and all other fuels, 15 cents a gallon. A surcharge of 4 cents a gallon is also imposed on Guam who use gasoline. Doesn't make sense.
That's what's printed.
Yeah. A driver's license renewal costs $25 for 3 years, $45 for 5. During the budget year that ended in September 2020, the fund posted an operating deficit of $4.9 million, which is a complete reversal from the $4.7 million operating surplus in the 2019 budget year. The deficit was a result of decreases in purchase of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel during pandemic restrictions of movement. In the 2019 budget year, the fund received $14.4 million in liquid fuel tax collections. In fiscal 2020, the amount of fuel tax revenue decreased to $11.6 million. The collection of vehicle registration and driver's license fees also decreased from $10.7 million to $8.4 million in that same time frame. The Guam Highway Special Revenue Fund was created by Guam law under, doesn't say, it says GCA without telling you what title. I suppose it's Title 11. For the purpose of performing maintenance on highways and roadways, implementing highway safety plans, programs, and projects, according to the Office of Public Accountability. The expectation is that GovGuam in general will honor the intent of the law and that funding source is specifically for road repairs and other projects directly related to road safety. But year after year, GovGuam decides to divert a sizable chunk of this funding source for uses other than to save lives on the road. The latest audit into the Highway Fund released by the OPA on Wednesday confirms that yet another budget year in which money has been diverted from this fund for uses other than safety of motorists, etc., etc. Some of the road fund's cash went to the Guam Regional Mass Transit Authority, which spent more than $600,000 from the Highway Fund for salaries, wages, overtime, and fringe benefits of certain people on the GRTA payroll. I got to stop here. I've said this so many times. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep saying it. That is, we don't have a mass transit authority. We don't have a public bus system. We are never going to have a public bus system so long as the market for that system is limited only to people that don't have any money. And that's basically who the bus systems services, people that have no other way to get around but on the bus. So we're dealing with the really lower end of the socioeconomic scale that can't afford to pay a bus fare sufficient to support the company. That's why this money had to be taken out of this liquid fuel fund. So I offer two alternatives. One, establish a real bus company. And by a real bus company, I mean a company or a real bus authority, perhaps, that would integrate all the buses we have on island. The Liberty buses from Naval Station and Anderson, the tourism buses from down on the beach, the school buses, and then the regular buses that ought to be commuter buses to take people to and from work, the doctor, etc. Because the biggest expense in any bus company is the rolling stock. And the problem with most city bus companies is there's a huge demand from about 6 a.m. till about 9 a.m., and then again from about 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. The rest of the time, the buses don't go anywhere. But because the diversity of the use that we put to all of those buses that I just mentioned, we could have a crackerjack bus company that integrated all of those assets. And if we did that, then we could charge the actual cost of operating those buses. And I've said this a million times. During the years that I worked in Agania, if I could have walked down to Marine Corps Drive and ponied up a couple bucks and gotten on a bus and ridden it downtown to Agania and then gotten on a little shuttle bus, kind of a local shuttle bus, I'd have done it. It would have saved me money, but better yet, it would have saved me time because I could have spent 20 or 25 minutes in either direction reading, doing something, but I can't read and drive at the same time. And if it were done right, I think a lot of other people would feel the same way. But any time I ever tried to ride the bus for any reason, it was just a nightmare. Nobody knew when the bus was coming. The bus was always late, on and on and on. So what we're doing right now is we're providing a social welfare benefit to people who can't afford cars. That's what we're doing, the lowest rung in the socioeconomic ladder. If we had a real bus company like the one I'm describing, then on a means test basis, we could issue passes to those folks who couldn't pay a regular fare, and they would be much better off because we'd have a real bus company instead of what we got. That's my first alternative. My second alternative is this. Get somebody at one of the departments and issue passes that could be redeemed at a taxi company. Or maybe even better yet, what's that local equivalent of Uber that we have here? There's a local equivalent.
I can't recall, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Spar or Store or Sprint or something like that, yeah. So cut a deal with them, a discount deal. Everybody who presents one of these passes from the government, which the government would pay less than the average person. Or do it with a taxi company, same thing. Or reimburse cab fares. That way you wouldn't be spending $600,000 for salaries, wages, overtime, and fringe benefits. And I suspect it would cost a whole lot less than maintaining this administrative bureau structure that doesn't take anybody anywhere at all. We have not had very good management at the Transit Authority. We've had really poor transportation. So I can't resist it. Every time this issue comes up to go through this litany. We spent $5.7 million over at the Mayor's Council, over $86,000 for overtime, and $2 million for fringe benefits. Now I have a perfect suggestion as to what to do with the Mayor's Council. Abolish it. The last thing we need is a Mayor's Council. Mayors are supposed to be village officers. They're supposed to operate in their villages. There's no need for them to have this parliamentary body, pass resolutions, pay Angel Saban $97,000 to make a fool of himself in front of the district court every time somebody he thinks is his brother gets sentenced for some heinous crime. So that's an easy place to save money. If we need the mayors, fine, let's keep the mayors. They're local officials. They don't need a council. Moving on, instead of reducing the amount that was diverted from the highway fund at the time when tax collections decreased during the pandemic, the payroll cost of the mayor's offices using money from the highway fund increased by $2.4 million in 2020 compared to the prior budget year. Yeah, what a waste of money. Another public law enacted by the legislature authorized the Mayor's Council to use $6.2 million from the highway fund for fiscal 2020. But the spending far exceeded that amount, as noted in the auditor's findings, which pointed out that the overspending beyond what the law allows is a recurring issue. There must be a way for the government and its officials to be held to the same standards that apply to regular Guamanians who are charged with various forms of penalties and punishments when they don't or can't afford to follow the law. The issue of disregarding laws on highway funds is not a one-off case. These events are starting to sound repetitive in other areas of Guam as well. Well, here's what you can do over there at the Guam Post. Let's see some names. Let's see the names of the folks who are responsible for the expenditure of these funds. Let's put them in the paper. Let's put their pictures on the front page. That's what newspapers do. And then I have a structural suggestion. What we need is an elected treasurer. And the statute that creates the treasurer would say that he spends the money only in accordance with its appropriation. No more transfer from one fund to another. This is what governors like to call cash management. So we didn't get as much cash over here as we thought, so we'll transfer some cash from here over there. You remember the days, and it hasn't been that long ago, when it took forever to get your income tax refund? Back in the day, when the rate on tax refunds, late tax refunds, was 6%, I knew some lawyers who deliberately overpaid their taxes to draw that interest from a safe investment. Not a liquid investment, but a safe investment. And the reason was that we would take this money that the law says you're supposed to reserve for tax refunds. Well, you know, we had to make payroll, so we had to take some of that money. So what we need is that elected treasurer. And if we don't have enough money for payroll, we don't make payroll. And you do that once, and you miss payroll by 1 day, and the lesson would be learned, and it would never happen again, and we wouldn't be dealing with editorials like this in the paper. Okay, let's take a short break here. When we come back, I'm probably going to give the Post a blue star.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Make every day epic. The new Samsung Galaxy S21 is here. The Samsung Galaxy S21 offers the highest resolution of photos and videos on a smartphone, which makes it perfect for those TikTok dances or class projects. With a sleek new look, striking design, and a battery that goes all day and beyond. Samsung Galaxy S21 is epic in every way. Come into GTA today and experience the new Samsung Galaxy S21 and let GTA help you make every day epic. GTA, we start with you.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Hey, okay, Pilot chimed in on Facebook and said the name of the company is Stroll. Yeah.
Stroll Guam, I think.
Stroll, yeah. So going back to what I was saying, government should cut a deal with Stroll, and anybody who presents that government identification, transit identification, would get a cut rate on Stroll, and it would be good for Stroll because they'd really build up their business base.
And when they first came out, I saw them all over the place. I think this was around the fall of, well, here on Guam, September 2019. You saw a lot of Stroll cars on the road.
Okay. Yeah, well, I haven't had the opportunity to use them, but more power to them. Okay, as I mentioned before the break, I'm going to award the coveted Blue Star once again to the Post. And that takes the Post up to, let's see here, 246 blue stars. to 57 for the Daily News and 4 for Candid News. Good going, folks. And next we get to the card. And, oh, you hit that bell pretty hard that time, Jose.
It's a card.
Yeah, all right. I got my program notes here. Of course, we start out with Steve, who is always on the card. It's not Steve versus anybody, except maybe Steve versus the world or the world versus Steve. You know, the hero of Jerry Kitchen, the man who knows all but will not tell all about Jeep Throat, the man who is very protective of his own motorcycle, that would assign patrol officers to do periodic checks on his house to make sure that his motorcycle is not being tampered with. So we've got that. We've got Melvin Wonpat continues his separatist grievance rap. Carlotta is even hiding the ball from Therese Terlahi, the very Speaker of the Legislature. And then Julian Uggan has developed some pen pals, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit later on. We talked about Clint and how rent-seeking works yesterday, so I'm not going to get into that again, except by popular demand. Okay, so let me grab my papers here. And let's start out with Steve. I think we've got some audio and video that we can play on the latest dealing with Steve and the Guam Police Department, right, Jose?
Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
If Guam police officers took a class called Raiding a House in America 101, among the first lessons would be that they have to get the address right. Welcome to this preview of our expose of a bunch of cops caught on camera destroying a home they raided and believing they got away with their crimes. On March 30 at 5:34 p.m., Superior Court Judge Dana Gutierrez signed a warrant that gave Guam police officers her authority to raid 163 Estrelita Street in Tamuning. Instead, 13 police officers knocked down the door of 163A Estrelita Street and began their attack. We asked Police Chief Stephen Ignacio whether his officers are trained in raiding the right address and who are these 13 policemen. Stay tuned for our expose on this raid and the victims that police officers left behind.
All right, so this, of course, comes from Candid News. And so a search warrant was issued, and according to Candid News, the cops went to the wrong house. Instead of 163 Estrelita, they went to 163A Estrelita. Well, no A. What's the difference, right? 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And then she said there are 13 cops. In the video, looks like there are 13 cops. So I don't know. I don't have inside information about this, but I have a feeling that when the news breaks, when Troy gets around to breaking the whole news, first thing that people will do will be to ask Steve Ignacio, Steve, what happened? Well, we're working closely with Paul Tapao and his dance instructor so that we don't have to say anything about what happened. But I can tell you this, I have no information from the get-go that there was a cover-up in this kerfuffle. Yeah. Steve is pretty dependable in that regard. So we'll just see where this one goes. I got a feeling by Monday there'll be much more information out about this. Okay, and then back to Jerry Kitchen, the story that never seems to end. And her story ran on KOAM last night. AG's office now involved in Jerry Kitchen investigation. The follow-up investigation into the Jerry Kitchen crash continues, but it seems it's taken an interesting turn with the involvement of the Office of Attorney General. In January, a red Jeep with several individuals inside, including an off-duty police officer, plowed through the building. Maybe Steve needs to get Chelsea Munia over here from the Department of Agriculture to help him deal with this.
Are they certified to be plowing?
Yeah. Well, only the Department of Agriculture can certify a plowman, right? Yeah. The driver was cited for imprudent driving. Chief of Police Steve Ignacio says he's been working with the AG's office, but could not give specifics. KUAM, here's some question and answer. KUAM, is that typical for an imprudent driving case? Ignacio, no. Like I said, we didn't have any information at the beginning, but as the investigation unfolded, we've developed more information. You know, one thing I'll give Steve Ignacio is he really developed a talent for making noise with his mouth without actually saying anything. Words come out, and I recognize all of the words that come out, but you put them all together, and he hasn't said boo. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the demonstration. The chief said one more interview related to the case will be conducted this week, if I can find time to meet with the AG. Additionally, he has not conducted internal affairs investigation because nothing in the investigation he's seen thus far has risen to that level where he would need to. I keep seeing these ads in the paper every day for this guy that's a retina specialist. They're like for optometrists or ophthalmologists. Pictures and everything are in the paper almost on a daily basis. Maybe we should cut that out and send it to Steve. He's seen nothing thus far that's risen to the level where he would need to do so. Everybody else on this whole island, Steve, has seen about a dozen things that would cause you to start an internal affairs investigation. Yeah, well, now, I like to speculate when these things come up, and that's all I've got here. I'm not even looking in my crystal ball. But who and what is the Attorney General's office investigating? Is it investigating Officer Champion, who did the so-called investigation here? Is he investigating the crash? Or is he investigating the chief of police and his failure to act like a chief of police? Lack of application to one's duties in certain circumstances. You know, it starts out as it could be misfeasance or nonfeasance, but there are some circumstances where it could be malfeasance. So you got to wonder, is that what the Attorney General's looking for? Or is the Attorney General saying, get that bozo out of the way? You know, this isn't that hard. Somebody's got to go in there and figure out how to write this up and present it to the public, because everyone who knows about Jerry Kitchen thinks it's horrible that the chief of police would treat this so nonchalantly, and that's the word. Steve, how are you today? Well, I'm pretty nonchalant.
Whatevs.
Yeah. What can you tell me about the crash down there at Jerry Kitchen? I don't know. So the continuing saga of Steve Ignacio and Jerry Kitchen continues, and now we've got another one to add to the items we're watching. 163 Estrellita Street, which I Let me see. Where's my...
It's 3A or not 3A. That's the question.
163, yeah. 3 to 3A or not to 3A. 163A, Estrella Street. Great Karnak here. May become as important as the 19th floor. Yeah. Okay, next on the card here is Melvin Wonpat versus sustainability. Now, a little foundation here. Melvin Wonpat is the executive director on the Chamorro, on the Council for Chamorro Independence. And in an article here that ran in the Post on the 28th of November, the title was Bora includes self-determination in voting rights reforms for territories. And lawmakers spent a little over half an hour on March 22 hearing testimony on Resolution 3836, which would express support for H.R. 1, which is perhaps one of the worst bills ever to be introduced in the House of Representatives. The House major proposes major voting reforms, etc., and the creation of a congressional task force that will explore voting rights issues in the territories and recommend changes for full and equal voting rights for citizens in the territories, including the election of the president and vice president. This is just, today I guess is a day to trot out stupidity and shine a bright light on it. But the only, if the commission wants, if this task force wants to make recommendations as to how people in the territories would have full equal voting rights, including election of president, the thing to do would be appropriate huge chunks of money and move everybody to one of the 50 states, because that's where your voting rights comes from. Okay, so you start out with a silly law and a silly task force, and then you come along with a silly man, Melvin Wonpat, the executive director on what's referred to as the Commission on Decolonization, but is really the Commission on Chamorro Separatism. He urged lawmakers to consider the implications of seeking equal voting rights when paired against the backdrop of Guam's self-determination and decolonization initiatives. Well, Guam's self-determination issue is Chamorro self-determination. It's not for me, or not for you if you're not Chamorro. And the decolonization is a nice word to use in that phrase, but it really has no applicability. But anyhow, that's where Melvin Wonpat is located, over there at the Commission on Decolonization. And here's a quote: "I'm not asserting that there's no value in equal representation and access to national voting rights for Guam. I don't think anyone is asserting that Guam and other U.S. territories could not benefit from national voting rights. If Guam was granted national voting rights, would that then usurp the self-determination and decolonization we have fought so long to achieve?" Let me have that 19th floor chord again, Jose. Let me try it again. If Guam was granted national voting rights, would that then usurp the self-determination and decolonization we have fought so long to achieve? Yeah, that would be a horrible thing. Wonpat said, "If we're allowed to vote for president, would that mean we are now equal and there no longer exists a need to self-determine or decolonize? If the federal government asserts that Guam is self-governing without these rights, what more if we are granted them?" Yeah, and here comes the punchline now. According to Wonpat, Guam's political issues require acknowledgement of political injustice. Critical race theory, anyone? Yeah. We've got to turn the clock back 100 years and judge what happened 100 years ago by the things we think are valuable today. And unless we address the 100-year-old grievance we can't really think about anything else. That is, assuming there was a grievance 100 years ago. According to WANPAT, Guam's political issues require acknowledgement of political injustice and need to be addressed at a fundamental policy level, not through another political Band-Aid. You know, like national voting rights. That would be a political Band-Aid, which is how he described the 1949 Guam Congress walkout and the subsequent adoption of the Organic Act. Well, these garnered much-needed attention and political action. They did not resolve Guam's political status issues and only created another avenue for resolution, WANPAT said. National voting rights, like the extension of U.S. citizenship to Chamorros in Guam, must only be seen as improvement and not a solution. WANPAT urged lawmakers to explore other avenues for political empowerment, but asked that the legislature adopts the resolution that language supporting Guam's self-determination when what he means is Chamorro self-determination. You know, the slipperiness here, I talk about this all the time. Control the language and you control the thought process. So convince everybody that Guam's decolonization and Chamorro self-determination are the same thing, when they're not. They're not even close. But that is the name of the game. And then that Chamorro self-determination means the same thing as decolonization. So that when the proper aspect of Chamorro self-determination is achieved, Guam, the island of Guam, becomes a Chamorro island, government of Chamorros, by Chamorros, for Chamorros, everybody else, basta, sige. That's what he's really talking about. So that was WANPAT's approach to trivialities like like having a voting representative in Congress or being able to vote for president. Let's take a short break here, and I'll come back to Melvin WANPAT.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon is back with all your mezcla favorites, like oxtail kadu, Kahlua pig and cabbage, and Chef Peter's style black stew frittata. Mezcla is ready to welcome back everyone with great service in a safe and friendly environment. Come on down and visit Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon, located on the first floor lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel. Open for lunch from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and for dinner from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call 969-2652 for reservations. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Yeah, so this is Melvin WANPAT, the executive director of the Decolonization Commission. Okay, now, we had a conference here on sustainability. Not exactly my favorite term. When I hear sustainability, I think Green New Deal. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also known as OAC. The Bernie Sanders. That's what I hear when I hear the word sustainability, and I fit it right in there with inclusivity, equity, and diversity, which I had some definitions for the other day. None of those words mean what they used to, nor does sustainability. So as down as I am on the whole idea of sustainability, at least as I understand it, Melvin WANPAT took it to an even lower level with his separatist rant. And here's how it goes. Guam's sustainability efforts must center on justice and Chamorro cultural values, according to Melvin WANPAT, executive director of the Commission on Decolonization. Juan Pat spoke during a panel at the University of Guam Environmental Conference on Wednesday. We have not only survived but thrived in our respective islands for generations prior to Western contact. I wonder how Melvin would know that. Maybe he asked his mother. It was definitely clear that what was missing in Guam's sustainability efforts was this very deliberate Chamorro perspective. Now, you got to work some cultural Marxism, and if you're Melvin Juan Pat, if you can't work cultural Marxism into it, you probably aren't going to be that interested. So we started a conversation on ways that we could genuinely incorporate traditional cultural values into the approach of sustainability. He said this also means pursuing justice beyond environmental sustainability. Yeah, I'm all for justice. Jose, do you know anybody who's against justice?
No.
I don't know that there is an anti-justice group on this island.
No.
No, I think everybody is for justice, right? So if he's for justice and we're for justice, and I guess we're going to be on the same side.
Unless it's just us.
Yeah. All right. He said, it also means pursuing justice beyond environmental sustainability. But this is the sustainability conference. This is not the racial justice conference, Melvin Juan Pat. Just thought I'd remind you. Here's a quote. Part of sustainability is not just shoring up our practices so that we're better. It's also about obtaining a level of parity and justice. Yeah. A little grievance politics in there, some racial politics. Not just environmental justice, but justice for our people. Now, since Melvin is being paid by the taxpayers here on to work for a body that is part of the government of Guam that we all paid for, who do you think he's referring to when he says our people? Probably every man jack among us, right? Probably everybody living here on the island.
Just us.
Can you do that? Nope. Let's try it again. Who do you think he's referring to here, Jose? Every man jack among us here on the island? Everybody living on the island?
Nope.
Yeah, not at all. Not even close. When he says our people, he obviously means Chamorros. Not just environmental justice, but justice for our people. Yeah, that's what he said. We have seen the drastic displacement of native peoples across the world. Yeah. BIPOCs, Black Indigenous People of Color. And I think Melvin is sending us a signal. I am in tune with all of these. Forget about Guam. I'm in tune with these movements all over the world. We call it cultural Marxism. Liberation of indigenous peoples, of colonized people, is extremely integral to the attainment of sustainable practices that are adopted on a policy level, on a governmental level. Now, this guy's on the public payroll. I got to pay for him to come up with drivel like this, racist drivel like this. Now, of course, if he were asked, he'd say, no, this isn't racist. This is about Chamorros and those who are Chamorros. It's a self-determination issue. For Guam, this includes determining a political status. This is the sustainability conference. So, strange as it may seem, I'm kind of sticking up for the folks that came to the conference that were interested in sustainability, not Melvin Juan Pat's kind of cultural Marxist critical race theory rant. For Guam, this includes determining a political status. Without this, any efforts are difficult, according to Wonpat. All right, I'm going to come back to Melvin Wonpat right after the big halftime show. So sit tight and enjoy.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The president says guns are a public health crisis. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. And that's why, he says, he's issued a number of executive actions yesterday to limit so-called ghost guns and a brace accessory that makes handguns more accurate. He's also asked the Justice Department to write sample legislation for states to take guns away from people thought to be a danger. The president brushing aside arguments the measures could run afoul of the Second Amendment.
They're phony arguments suggesting that these are Second Amendment rights at stake from what we're talking about. But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute.
Reaction from Capitol Hill.
Top House Republican Kevin McCarthy says President Biden's executive action attempts to trample over Second Amendment rights and says Republicans in the House will pursue every option, including judicial, to protect the right to keep and bear arms. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi joined President Biden's urging for the Senate to take up background check bills passed by the House. Finding bipartisan support on gun control is unlikely, though Pennsylvania Republican Senator Pat Toomey, who has proposed background check options before, says he believes there is an opportunity to keep guns away from those who have no legal right to them.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Police in Bryan, Texas say they have a suspect, but not a motive yet, for Thursday's workplace shooting that left one person dead and 5 others injured.
The gunman walked into Kent Moore Cabinets in Bryan in the middle of the afternoon firing shots. Police Chief Eric Buskey described what officers found when they got to the scene moments later.
There was one person deceased. There were 4 people critically wounded with gunshots, 1 person less wounded with a gunshot, and someone had an asthma attack. All were transported to the hospital.
A state trooper was also seriously wounded during the pursuit of the suspect. At least one witness said the gunman seemed selective about who was shot.
Fox's Gernal Scott. America is listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Not the vice president, but the DHS secretary traveling to the southern border Thursday.
Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas visiting the border amid growing calls for President Biden and Vice President Harris to visit for themselves. New numbers released by Customs and Border Protection. In March, agents apprehended 53,000 family units, the most since June of 2019. Altogether, CBP stopped 172,000 people last month. 19,000 kids crossed the border alone, the largest tally ever. Meanwhile, alarming news as Texas Governor Greg Abbott now calls for the Texas Department of Public Safety and the Texas Rangers to investigate a federally run center for children in San Antonio. This after disturbing allegations of sexual abuse and neglect. In Hidalgo, Texas, Alex Hogan, Fox News.
A South Korean oil tanker that's been held for months by Iran in a dispute over billions of dollars seized by Seoul has been freed and sailed away. Monday early today, just hours ahead of further talks between Tehran and world powers over its nuclear deal. We could learn today whether some Amazon warehouse workers have chosen to unionize.
This vote, open to nearly 6,000 workers at the Bessemer warehouse in Alabama, was done by mail. The Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, which wants to represent the workers, said more than 3,000 ballots came in. The National Labor Relations Board, which is conducting the count, has opened the envelopes and read the names on each vote. Some of the votes have been contested, and according to the union, Amazon is contesting most of them. The contested votes are put aside, and the counting of the other votes began. If it's close, the contested ballots would come into play. If the workers vote to organize, it would be Amazon's first union in the U.S. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Wall Street, the Dow gained 57 points, NASDAQ 140, the S&P 500 closed 17 points higher. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Day. This is Severina. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com.
76 Circle K, the Subaki Tower, and Spa Ayalam bring you another staycation. We are celebrating Mom and all she does. Win a 2-night stay at the luxurious Subaki Tower, get pampered by Spa Ayalam, and enjoy a delicious lunch and dinner at Casa Oceano. All you have to do is purchase $35 or more in 76 fuel and enter to win a staycation fit for a mom. The more you gas, the more chances of winning. Visit 76circlekguam.com or any Circle K location for more information.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon is back with all your mezcla favorites, like oxtail kadu, Kahlua pig and cabbage, and Chef Peter's style black stew frittata. Mezcla is ready to welcome back everyone with great service in a safe and friendly environment. Come on down and visit Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon, located on the first floor lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel. Open for lunch from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and for dinner from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call 969-2652 for reservations. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
So here we are again with Melvin Wampat. And Melvin Wampat goes on to say, we're in unincorporated territory. It's kind of like living in political purgatory. You are domestic in a foreign sense and foreign in a domestic sense. Not so. We live in a very weird gray area where we have to have relationships with other countries. We do. But we don't dictate the terms of those relationships. Melvin, no country dictates the terms of its relationships with other countries. If there were an independent, let's say there were an independent, a kingdom of Guam and you were the king, what other country do you think you could dictate terms of a relationship to? Nauru, maybe?
Nope.
No. So much fuzzy thinking here, what we used to call woolly thinking. Melvin Wampat says it really begins with political status, as you were. He says, we live in a very weird gray area. Now, when Melvin uses the word we, you got to remember who he's talking about. He's not talking about all of us here on the island. He's only talking about the people that he thinks are entitled to self-determination. And he goes on to say it really begins with political status and self-determination and decolonization. The skipping down a little bit, the Guam Green Growth Working Group, established in 2019 and comprised of GovGuam officials, academics, nonprofits, and more, adopted the UN's goals as part of its guidance. The goals range UN's goals. They adopted UN's goals for its guidance, this Guam Green Growth Working Group. Here's one of the goals: no poverty. So in the process of doing the sustainability thing, no poverty. There can't be any poor people. And going on, let's see. And climate action is also very important. These things all kind of get wrapped in the same package, don't they? This is another great way for us to raise the level of our conversation, Wanpat said. We are also dealing with quite a big environmental injustice. Long-standing injustice we have experienced. Almost every island of environmental degradation and contamination that continues to plague us. On Guam, there are a number of Superfund sites. I only know one. But I'm not really into this environmental wacko stuff. And then he goes on to say, environmental justice is not just about our lands and our oceans. It's about the impact that it has on our people. And of course, we know who our people is. The 12th Annual University of Guam Conference on Island Sustainability runs Friday. So this is an Anamita Carr story. And yeah, surprise, right? So the story, the article is about the Sustainability Conference. And those words snuck in there a couple of times, but it's really about Melvin Wanpat and separatism.
Well, here's a good way to have people accept your credibility. Keep citing the UN as a source.
Exactly. I'll tell you, when I hear the word UN, my doubtfulness gland just shrinks out of existence.
That successful entity.
Yeah. So Anamita turned an article about sustainability, for whatever that's worth, into an argument into a platform for Melvin Wanpat to spout his separatist neo-Marxist rhetoric. And a better headline for this would have been Melvin Wanpat hijacks sustainability conference with the help of Anamita Carr. All right, that's the end of that item on the card. Next, I've got Therese versus Carlotta, but I notice that someone has stumbled into the... Really? Okay. All right, another Joe, states versus territories. Is that implicated in the card, another Joe?
I'm sorry?
Are you ready, another Joe?
So this Melvin Wanpat, is he known as Pulen Speaks?
As who?
P-U-L-E-N Speaks. Does he have this title in his is this through the UOG his thesis, or I'm not sure if it's the same guy, but there's a guy that was talking about the Guam political status. So regarding Guam's political status, they keep bringing up as if there has never ever been opportunity for change of political status. That's not true. It's just they chose not to change the political status. I think they chose status quo, so far as I can remember, or I don't know. So the question is, also, isn't it possible that the concept of status quo plus as an unincorporated territory of the United States that we could request for such terms. Whether or not the Congress actually agrees to the terms or implements the terms is a different story. But if they put it before Congress, they could request. In theory, they could, not that there's no precedent for it, right? They could request to have an electoral college voters, which seems really out of character because they would have to change the electoral system.
You couldn't. Congress can't do that. Anything that's in the Constitution is beyond the power of Congress to change. But Congress really does have a role here, and that is that. And anybody who's listened to Tall Tales and pays attention knows that being an unincorporated territory is, in a lot of ways, the best political status that you could have under the American flag. Now, if Juan Pat is so hung up here on separatism, then what he needs to do is petition to get Michael St. Nicholas to petition the Congress to grant Guam independence. Introduce a bill that say on the 4th of July, 2022, the United States relinquishes all sovereign authority over the island of Guam. And you got it. You're done. You know how many times any of our representatives have ever done that, another Joe? None. You know how many times any of the loudmouths like Juan Pat have ever even suggested it? None. And then there's this idea, the Chamorro people have never had the opportunity to make a choice. Well, the way to do that then would be to petition the Congress to hold a referendum. Congress would not be bound by the Voting Rights Act or by the Due Process and Equal Protection Clauses of the 14th Amendment because we're an unincorporated territory. But no one has ever done any of those things. The only thing that anybody on Guam, Chamorros, has ever done about political status goes back to 1948, when the Guam Congress petitioned the United States Congress to enact an organic act and provide citizenship for the people of Guam. That's the only thing that ever happened, the only move that's ever been made. Other than that, it's just loudmouths like Melvin Juan Pat living on the government of Guam payroll, spouting this separatist nonsense over and over again, appealing to the low information voters so that they'll get out and stand along the highways with signs, etc., and engage in self-righteous virtue signaling. And a lot of others who don't understand or do understand and don't care will go along with the virtue signaling and say, yeah, the moral people never had the opportunity for self-determination. When I think if you really got down to it, if you ever had that plebiscite, probably 90% of the folks on Guam are going to say, leave it alone. I like things just the way they are, which, of course, the Juan Pats of the island would say, well, that wouldn't be decolonization. So even though most of the people want it, that won't work. Right, another Joe?
I think people are confused by the legal terms, the legal understanding. And like you said, they're taking advantage of the confusion of the people as to exactly what they're looking at and exactly the way things are accomplished. So there needs to be fact checkers and say, hey, look, this is a response to your claim, and this is why it's false, and here's the actual situation here. And if we want to accomplish anything, we need to have a clear understanding. And I'm more for the idea of an act of Congress to let us have more of a say with regards, the compound go for country issue. I think that people want a little bit more of have more of an input to the terms of the agreement. And so I think that might be an act of Congress, along the lines of an act of Congress. So, it's usually about economics, usually about the economy. If our economy is doing well or better, people have a lot less to complain about. But we have a $2 billion territorial debt, and I don't know how much of that we can pay day off. So anyway, I think there needs to be fact checking, and these people need to be called out as to what they're saying is true and false, what is false, mostly false so far, and we need a better understanding. But thanks for your time, Bob. Appreciate it.
Okay, it's always good to talk to you, Another Joe. Thanks for calling in here. And following up on Another Joe is none other than... That's it, the most dangerous man in the room. So when are you going to be out carrying a sign that says "Protege Protection"? Or Carl?
I'm going to be I'm going to need some heavy drugs to do that. I don't think I'm going to be doing that anytime soon. But anyway, yeah, before I get on to my main point, I just wanted to make a statement that, the last couple of programs we've been talking about abortion, that brought to mind, I remembered that, when I was an unborn fetus, I was still, an unborn child, I was still dangerous. I was so dangerous that even then I was known as the most dangerous man in the womb.
Okay, Carl. Well, give him the snare.
I can hear
drum. Give him the snare. There you go.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear. I could hear the collective groans and eye roll, and you see the eye rolls on your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Bob, I just wanted to chime in, and I've mentioned before that, we Chamorros did choose a political status. My mother and her 9 siblings and all the Chamorros on island had a choice after the war, either go off on their own, like the Philippines chose to do. They made it clear what they wanted. America wasn't really that excited about it, but said, well, it's what you guys want, okay. So they let them go. And we could have done the same thing, but we looked at the options, going off on our own, or forming a relationship with the most powerful, most prosperous nation on the face of the earth. And I don't think it takes a stretch of the imagination to understand why Chamorros decided the way they did, why my mother decided and her generation decided what they did. It's not a shock. And they weren't indoctrinated. They'd just been through 3 brutal years of occupation, and they weren't really interested in having another foreign power come in and do that as still potentially possible. So we have had choose our political status. The problem is that the core leadership in the separatist movement don't like the status that my mother and her generation chose, because it locks them out of power. And this is all about power. Make no mistake about it. It's about coming to control and coming to power. 100%. Anyway, Bob, I'd like to ask you a question because I'm curious. I'm often told, I often hear the comment, that, the United States will never let Guam go, I think if the people of Guam, our people.
Our people, right.
Yeah, exactly. If we became, disgruntled, and I think that's what the separatist leadership is trying to do. They're trying to encourage
dissent. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
To bring us to that point. But if that did happen, and there was mass protests, and our representative in Congress put forth a bill for independence, I don't see any way that the United States could really keep us. Keep Guam. The Philippines basically did something like that, and they went off on their own.
Well, actually twice, in 1946, and then again when they ended the treaty relationship with the United States for Clark and Subic, and they said, we don't want it anymore, we're on our own. So I think you make a good point there. I suspect that if the court of worldwide court of public opinion swung that way, it might very well be that the United States would pull up stakes and move out of Guam. I don't want to encourage Melvin Wonpat because I like Guam exactly the way it is, even with Melvin Wonpat. I suppose especially with Melvin Wonpat having the ability to spout off as he does, even though I don't like the idea of paying for him. But anyhow, good thoughts are, Carl.
Just one other quick thought. You know, the other thing that we need to be concerned about is what many have described as China's brand of neo-colonialism. They're encircling the globe with their over $1 trillion One Belt, One Road initiative. 60 Minutes Australia has a few really quite good videos. One of them was an investigative reporter visited a few South Pacific islands because they were investigating why China is expanding its tentacles into the South Pacific. And I remember one particular interview of a top official of a particular island, and I'm sorry, I can't remember which one it was, but he confessed. He said he was approached by a Chinese official and offered $1 million if he would take the necessary steps to cut ties with Taiwan and move their relationship to mainland China. And I think there is a mindset that kind of would like to be in that position of being able to have China bid for loyalty. Duterte in the Philippines, I think he was I don't know what went on, you know, if there was some under the table stuff, but he did start moving his loyalties toward China, and now I think he's starting to have some regrets about that. It's backfiring on him. But anyway, that's my final thought for the day. Thanks for letting me chime in.
Okay, Carl. So it's about time for the seventh inning stretch. Come back from the seventh inning stretch, and we'll check in with Greg and see what Greg's got to say.
Chili's is bringing you a full meal offer with 3 for me for just $15. You get a beverage, a starter, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola or iced tea, pick a starter, then select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like Cajun pasta with grilled chicken, ranchero chicken tacos, or the savory Santa Fe burger. Dine in today or visit chilisguam.com for delivery and to-go options. Chili's, 3 for me for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, savor the moment.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more. On demand. Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago. That means we got just 2 more innings left at Tall Tales for this whole week, and then Jose and I go into limbo for 70 straight hours. So I got a long-distance call from Chicago. It's a guy named Greg. He wanted to speak to our international radio listening audience. So what do you want to tell us, Greg?
I'm not from Chicago. I'm from Saipan.
You're calling from Saipan, not from Chicago.
Well, I'm in Guam. I just have a Guam ITNE.
Oh, okay. I thought you were in Chicago since I was in Wrigley.
Nah, I'm not in Chicago.
All right.
Hey, I love you guys. Hey, I just got to... Here's a thought. If we go for Guam independence, so what happens to stimulus 1, 2, and 3?
We would be so much better off without those, right?
If
Yeah.
we had a governor that didn't shut down all the local businesses and keep all of the Guam workers employed, sitting at home. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty sad day, wouldn't it, Greg?
That's just my thought.
Yeah, good thought, Greg.
All right. Hey, you take care, Bob. Love you guys.
Good talking to you, Greg. Thanks for calling. I mean, it's pretty obvious, and I noticed that the separatists, except for Mr. Wanpat here, have been relatively quiet since we've been stuck here with Wuhan virus, and all of this money keeps coming from the mother country. When we don't spend a nickel that way, but it comes this way by the millions. I don't think that an independent Guam would be entitled, or would be in a position where that would happen. And then our Carl made another good point. You know, China is flexing its muscles around this part of the world. And I suspect that if the United States were to say, we're ending American sovereignty here, the Chinese would be on this place like a duck on a June bug. And if you follow the Chinese and their approach to international relationships, colonization, indigenous people like the Uyghurs, on and on and on, all of these things that Wanpat keeps carping about, I don't think that they would give a Guam a pass because we do the dances that Frank Ramon invented in 1987, or because we've taken the hillbilly songs that the GIs brought here after World War II and added Chamorro lyrics to them. I don't think that they would say, well, these people have their own culture, so we're not going to be too... I don't think that's going to happen.
Just keep an eye on Taiwan.
Yeah, the way they're treating... How about Hong Kong? You know, it's supposed to be 50 years. One government, one country, two systems. It didn't even last 30 years.
Nope.
So, you know, if the United States weren't here, you could bet China would be here. And I don't think it would work out very well for most of the people that live here. Okay, let's move on to Therese versus Carlotta. Therese Terlahi, the Speaker of the Legislature. Carlotta Leon Guerrero, who's in charge of something at the governor's office, and right now is the acting SHPO. And that's a really, really high position, SHPO. State Historical Preservation Officer, SHPO. And when the SHPO sneezes, the military gets sick. They come down with a serious disease because the SHPO is so powerful.
When the SHPO hits the fan.
Yeah. So here's a story. Oversight hearing with State Historic Preservation Office next week on base burials. After reports of numerous burials at Marine Corps Camp Blas and little shared information, the legislature will hold an oversight hearing in a roundtable next week with the Guam State Historic Preservation Office. The Pacific Daily News last month reported there's evidence of multiple ancient burial sites found at the new Marine Corps base built in Dededo. The military, historic preservation, and the governor have known for months. The military deferred to the local government to provide details. The government of Guam declined to do so. What happened? Carlotta Leon Guerrero, the acting SHPO, said she had a preliminary report on burials but declined to share it in its entirety. Well, you know, she is the SHPO after all. And if you read the Sunshine Law very carefully, it would say, you'll find language in there that says the SHPO doesn't have to do anything the SHPO doesn't want to do. Yeah. That's what Carlotta says. She provided 3 paragraphs of the report that stated there is evidence of 12 individuals in the 4 graves ranging in age and sex. They appear to be from the latte period. It's 8 more burials than reported at the same site last year. Camp Blas stated that there are 4 burial pits at the site preserved in place and that a definitive number of individuals is pending further analysis. It also stated that given the ongoing nature of the work, this is the military now, we defer to the SHPO to deem it appropriate to publicly release preliminary information. Military says, ask the SHPO. Multiple inquiries have been sent to the SHPO, including from Talina Nelson, who called the oversight and roundtable hearings, and from the Vigilance Committee. Leon Guerrero declined to release details to all. And I've seen what she sent to the Vigilance Committee because they copied in the media, which even includes me. And she says, we can't because of federal law. And she also says, nobody here has the authority to disobey federal law. So she starts out talking like, I can't let you see that. But then when she's called on that, she says, no, it's not me. It's their regulations, even though they said we should deal with it.
FOIA that law.
Yeah. The community roundtable hearing is scheduled for 3 p.m. on April 14. On the agenda, the 2011 Programmatic Agreement, which includes historic preservation during the Marine Corps buildup, guidelines for consultation regarding the finding of burial sites and human remains, potential to expand consultation procedures to include public comments from ancestral land descendants and cultural experts. Ancestral land descendants. How can someone descend from land? Doesn't matter. It's about the culture, so we don't have to be too precise here.
Sounds legit.
Status and plans for ancestral human remains contained in the inventory of the government of Guam. The oversight hearing will directly follow at 4 p.m. It will discuss status on burial sites and human remains discovered at Camp Blas in 2020 and 2021. Treatment plans and mitigation of burial sites and human remains at Camp Blas. And status on collaboration with Comisión y Fino Chamorro regarding the creation of a Chamorro plaque commemorating the Magwak site. How about, Speaker Terlai, how about asking the SHPO where she gets off telling a reporter that she has the ability to answer, but she doesn't want to until someone calls her on it, and then she says, I can't because of federal law. When the local Fed said, ask her. This is, Speaker Terlai, this is what we call stonewalling, which I think is quite appropriate when we're dealing with that site out there at Camp Blas. She's stonewalling, so it's up to you to lay it on her. SHPO, Carlotta, we don't appreciate stalling, stonewalling. If you don't have the authority, if you didn't have the authority to release that information, you should have consulted with the chief of police and told us that from the get-go. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just so strange what happens to people when you give them a little authority. I'm not going to answer that question. Why not? Well, I don't think you should be asking me questions. Why not? Because I don't want to answer. Okay, I got it. I get it. It's like our Carl said a little earlier, it's about power. And I come back to one of my favorite Abraham Lincoln quotations. Abraham Lincoln said, almost any man can stand adversity, but if you want to know the true measure of a man's character, give him power. Now, of course, back in the 1860s, when Abraham Lincoln was alive, the word man meant mankind. It included males and females. And in the 1860s, those were the only sexes we had. A strange time in the history of mankind. Can I say that? Yeah. Okay, I got the legislature versus the governor, but I covered that yesterday at Ray's request. The next, I've got Julian Uggan versus the United States. And this is going to take me a little while because as I read this, there's a lot of gaslighting going on here, which isn't strange coming from the folks on that side of the whole separatist issue. But we start out with a Daily News article. UN Human Rights Council, no free, prior, and informed consent for buildup. Starting out, the Human Rights Council didn't say that, and you'll see that as I get into this. A construction for the Marine Corps relocation continues. The latest project is underway for an aviation administration building. Members of the United Nations Human Rights Council expressed concerns about the growing military presence on Guam. While there is no enforcement power behind it, this is the first formal international recognition Guam has received regarding build-up dissent and the island's self-determination, according to Blue Ocean law attorney Julian Uggan. So what I just read came from him. This is another anime to car. So I think that tells you an awful lot of where this story is. It's going to be more about Julian Uggan than it is about what actually happened. This is the beginning. It's opening a door, Uggan said. There's a record now that there's human rights concerns on Guam. Now, here we go. The 3 UN special rapporteurs, Frenchie, where are you now that I really need you? rapporteurs. I looked it up, and it's the best I can do is rapporteurs. But I think what it comes down to in English, we'd say reporters. So that's how I'm going to use it.
Not Jurassic Park dinosaurs?
No, I'm going to just say reporters. So I kind of cheated, and I looked up to find out what a reporter is. A reporter. And here it is, appointed by the Human Rights Council of the UN. These mandate holders act independently of governments, and as such play an important role in monitoring sovereign nations and democratic elected governments' policies. Rapporteurs do not receive any financial compensation for their work from the United Nations, though they receive personnel and logistical support from the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Each year, rapporteurs gather together for an annual meeting in Geneva. Clarification, this is not Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. It's Geneva, Switzerland, the other Geneva, where they discuss issues of common interest, coordinate their work, and meet with a range of stakeholders, including states and civil society organizations. Now, here's the role of rapporteurs. Special rapporteurs often conduct fact-finding missions to countries to investigate allegations of human rights violations. They can only visit countries that have agreed to invite them. Yeah. UN Human Rights Council, right? No.
So did the U.S. invite them here?
No, and they're not the council. They're kind of a group of independent contractors, is what they are. Yeah. Reporters regularly assess and verify complaints from, here it goes, complaints from alleged victims. Now, who do you think that might have been? That guy who's always out here on the sidewalk when we leave? No. The Shippo? No.
Nope.
Julian Hogan? Aha. Yeah. Once a complaint is verified as legitimate, an urgent letter or appeal is sent to the government that has allegedly committed the violation. If no complaint has been made, reporters may intervene on behalf of individuals or groups of people of their own accord. But they have to be invited by the host country. Have you seen any people stumbling around here calling themselves reporters? No. Now, give me a minute here, and I'll even tell you who they are. I think. Well, let's head for Louisville, Kentucky, and I'll find it while we're on our way to Louisville.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Sunday brunch at Mezcla Bistro in Hagåtña is back.
Come and enjoy Mezcla's true taste of Guam.
At only $28.95, enjoy your Sunday with your friends and family with their free-flowing house mimosa or house draft beer. Open for 2 seatings at 10:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m.
Let Mezcla serve up your favorite local foods. Call them at 479-2652
or 479-2653 to book a reservation. Limited seating available.
Mezcla reminds everyone to be safe and stay sanitized. Sunday brunch at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, so here we are, Louisville, Kentucky, Churchill Downs, home of the Kentucky Derby, and I found what I was looking for. I have, was that Melvin Borja trying to interfere with my broadcast here?
I did not invite him.
All right. Yeah, so the 3 reporters are David R. Boyd, special reporter on the issue of human rights obligations relating to the enjoyment of safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Jose Francisco Cali Tsai, special reporter on the rights of indigenous people. Marcos A. Oriana, special reporter on the implications for human rights of the environmentally sound management and disposal of hazardous substances and waste. These are the 3 reporters. These are the guys that sent this letter that Anna Mitra based her article, Human Rights Council. They're not the Human Rights Council. They're sort of independent contractors. They aren't even paid by the Human Rights Council, as I mentioned earlier. So they wrote this letter, and I can't even tell who it's addressed to because it starts out like this: Excellency. So Julian maybe have told him to write it to me. Let's presume that that's who they mean when they say, yeah, Excellency. And then they go down, we have the honor to address you in your capacities as special reporter. Not as the council, but as special reporter. So, you know, Anamita, you start right out gaslighting us here. And that's because Julian Uggan gaslighted you. This is not the Human Rights Council. This is these three reporters. And then, according to the information received, there's two paragraphs, and then the third paragraph begins, according to the information received.
So they never set foot on Guam.
They never set foot on Guam. They didn't have permission. So who do you think they received the information from? So now you probably understand why I show this in the calendar, in the card, as or in the summary, as Julian Uggan has developed some pen pals. So he sends them this stuff. They format it into a really nice letter, send it back, and sign it with these fancy French titles. Julian takes it to Anamita. Oh, my goodness, look at the UN. You know, look out the window. Are there powder blue tanks rolling down the street? Are men with blue helmets that say UN on the front? Are they knocking on the door? And according to the information received, this is how I'm not going to read it all, but I'll give you some of the highlights. The island of Guam is the traditional homeland of the indigenous Chamorro people, who are known for advanced seafaring. Chamorro people are known for advanced seafaring. What is it, paddle boards?
No, proa. Proa?
No, I mean right now.
No.
Yeah. The island, traditional homeland, who are known for advanced seafaring, horticulture, hunting and fishing, and distinct architecture. So if it said who were known, maybe that sentence would make sense. The Chamorro have inhabited Guam for some 3,500 years and possess a continuity of existence with their ancestral past and an intention to transmit their land, resources, and culture to future generations. The Chamorro represent 37% of Guam's total population of approximately 167,000 inhabitants. The information received, again, the information received, I don't say the information received from Julian, but relates to the United States' current increase in its military presence in Guam by deploying thousands of personnel, constructing a live-fire training complex at Retidian, and intensified military operations at Mariana Island Training and Testing Area. The U.S. military currently occupies about 30% of the island. Reportedly, next paragraph, the Chamorro people were not consulted about the advanced militarization of Guam, and the United States did not adequately seek or obtain their free and informed consent.
Don't we elect a governor?
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about indigenous people. We're talking about the Chamorro people.
Oh, 38%.
Yeah. So the implication here is that the Navy should have never turned over one shovel full of dirt until it somehow got the consent of the Chamorro people.
You know, now, I'm Chamorro. My father is Chamorro. And at the risk of people calling me a self-hater, it's very important to tell the truth and give a true narrative of what's going on. This is embarrassing.
It is. It really is. It really is. And again, we can thank Anamita, UN Human Rights Council, no free, prior, and informed consent for buildup. And this is reportedly the Chamorro people were not consulted, which would be, assuming it were possible, how would you go about doing it?
I would say I can't wait for them to do a report on the ACLU and how they are not asking the Chamorro people if they can come and abort their babies.
Exactly. The military buildup directly impairs the ability of the indigenous Chamorro to self-govern and threatens to cause additional and irreparable harm to the land and sea environments on and around Guam. So it impairs the ability of the indigenous Chamorro to self-govern. So that's why, again, why I labeled this as Julian Uggan's got a pen pal. Julian Uggan writes all this stuff out, right? And they sends it to these three folks who give it to a clerk who said, go through it and change happy to glad wherever it appears, and we'll sign it and send it off. We'll send it back to Julian, who can give it to Anamita and say, hey, look, Anamita, UN Human Rights Council, man, look at this. In addition to current threats, residual nuclear contamination from historical U.S. weapons testing has not been effectively remedied and continues to threaten the rights of the Chamorro. The United States territorial control over Guam as a U.S.-administered non-self-governing territory has had significant consequences for the Chamorro people, including the denial of adequate political representation and authority and the loss of traditional lands, ancestral remains, and cultural artifacts. The Chamorro, parenthesis, and others on Guam. Wow, there's a concession, right?
Well, finally.
A concession. The Chamorro and others on Guam, which Kelly Marsh would like because it's in parentheses, cannot vote for the U.S. presidency, have no Senate representation, and can only elect one non-voting member of the U.S. House of Representatives. In 2019, the United States Ninth Circuit Court in Davis, Guam, invalidated an effort by the government of Guam to hold a non-binding plebiscite. The referendum would have allowed native inhabitants to express their opinion about Guam's political status vis-a-vis the United States as either independent, free association, or statehood. I got to give Julian credit. He's a good writer. Next, impact of increased militarization on Chamorro cultural property. And maybe I'll hang on to this here. See who's in the green room. I want to spend some time on this on Monday. This is really important. And it is such a charade. Let's find out what another Joe. Yeah, go ahead, another Joe.
Yeah, Bob. So the very successful, good writing lawyer, Mr. Uggan, he seems to be making himself the spokesman not only for the jurisdiction of Guam, territory of Guam, but also the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth of the CNMI, or the CNMI. So I'm kind of curious about that because he's talking about the Chamorro, getting the permission for the Chamorros, but he goes from talking about Guam to talking about CNMI. But these are two different groups of Chamorros, I think, unless there's some sort of official body of Chamorro representation for both Guam and the CNMI. I'm not sure I've ever heard of that.
The way this paper is written, the Chamorros are a body politic, and apparently, they have leadership and they have ways of consenting to things or not consenting to things. That's what Julian apparently would have the reporters believe, because that's the way this paper writes.
Okay, Bob, even in the days of the so-called wars and conflicts with the Spaniards, there were different chiefs, and the chiefs didn't always see eye to eye or agree with each other. So are we to believe that the leaders of the two different jurisdictions are on the same page with Mr. Uggan?
Well, I don't think Mr. Uggan cares about the Northern Marianas. This is snarky, but I don't really think he cares about the Chamorros on Guam. I think Mr. Uggan is most interested in finding where the parade is, finding out where the biggest, fanciest float is, and then climbing on that float and saying, "Hey, over here, Julian Uggan, look at me." Because what I'm reading here just looks like Julian Uggan's bitch sheet, all the things that he wants to bitch about, and now has the ability to say, well, look, I got the United Nations Human Rights Council to pay attention to us. This is a tremendous breakthrough. Round of applause, please, over here. He probably has his own producer coming along.
You know, he's kind of like the little brother. He's like the little brother who kind of he's kind of like Dennis the Menace, but he's still your brother. And you oh man, you're kind of like oh, he kind of makes trouble. He's kind of a useless, but then you're like you behind the scenes, you're like, man, that's my little brother. He can really make trouble.
Okay, we'll see you on Monday, another Joe. I got to call it Klitz. See you then.
That's your time, Club.
All right, everybody. We'll see you at 1600 on Monday. We'll continue with this.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
It's a crisis. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. According to President Biden, gun violence, announcing a series of executive actions yesterday to limit it.
This gun violence in our neighborhood is having profound impact on our children, even if they're never involved in pulling the trigger or being the victim of on the other side of it.
The president wants the Justice Department to write rules to control ghost guns, which are user-assembled from kits, and develop sample red flag laws to take guns away from people perceived to be a threat. Montana Republican Senator Steve Daines says this is a knee-jerk reaction.
It's not going to make us any safer. It just infringes on our Second Amendment rights. It infringes on law-abiding Americans.
About potential Second Amendment challenges, the president says no amendment is absolute. Hours after the White House announcement, there was deadly workplace violence in Texas.
There was one person deceased. There were 4 people critically wounded with gunshots, one person less wounded with a gunshot, and someone had an asthma attack. All were transported to the hospital.
Bryan, Texas Police Chief Eric Buskey says the shootings happened at a cabinet shop where the suspect was employed. They don't know the motive yet. The suspect is in custody. Thousands are in harm's way in the Caribbean.
About 16,000 people around the La Soufriere volcano on the island of St. Vincent have been told to leave. Officials say it's on the verge of erupting, so people are getting on board cruise ships, heading to shelters away from the danger zone, or getting to other islands, including Barbados and St. Lucia.